Hi, this is Danny from CoffeeTeaandPvP.com. Today I want to talk to you about how to get started as a PvP player in Archeage. This guide will hopefully orient you with some basic mechanics of the game and help you regarding where to find PvP in Archeage and how to get ready for it. Right off the bat, what you need to know is that this game takes a pretty significant grind to get to most of the PvP content. The PvP zones are designed for characters level 30 and up. Sure, you can go there sooner, but if you do, it's likely that both the players and the NPCs in those zones are going to wreck you. Also of note, the battlegrounds and arenas don't start until level 40. If you're not scared off yet, let's get started at the beginning. Alright, so which faction should you pick? The western side has western looking humans and elves, while the eastern side has eastern looking humans and cat people. You gotta play what you want to be looking at for the next couple hundred hours of your game time, right? But if I had to pick a side to say which racials are better, I would definitely say the cats, because they have a reduced falling damage, and that can be useful in PvP if you're using the terrain to your advantage, or if you're hopping off your glider while you're swooping down on one of your opponents. Next, you need to pick a fighting style. Yeah, there's hundreds of different combinations in the game, but what you really need to decide is what kind of fighting style is right for you. I mean, do you want to be the melee type who stays on their opponent, hits them with stuns, and does really good melee DPS? Or do you want to be an arrow-plinking archer with mobile DPS and range? Or do you want to be a spellcaster with really hard-hitting spell attacks, but with slower charge-up times and very poor mobility? We're still early in the game, but most of the PvP builds either focus around the Battle Rage tree, which is the melee skill tree, the archery skill tree, or the sorcery skill tree, as these are some of the very strongest trees in the game. The stealth tree is also fairly strong. You can change skill trees pretty easily later in the game, but each of these fighting styles uses different types of equipment with different primary stats, and that can be much more difficult to replace later on. Right now, in 1.2, archery is a very popular core build because it's strong, constant, ranged, and mobile DPS. But you know, 1.2 hasn't been out here for that long, and things can change. So if you're a PvP healer, Vitalism is probably going to be your core tree, but you're also probably going to want to grab an offensive fighting style to go with it, at least for leveling up, because it's going to be tough grinding through the thousands and thousands of quest NPC mobs that you're going to have to kill from 1 to 50 if your best options usually involve, throwing heals at the NPCs. Once you hit level 10, you can change your skill trees at any of the Priest of Nui statues. You can also go back to any of the previous skill trees you've leveled without losing any of the progress you've put into them. So the risk is pretty low if you want to experiment and mix and match. The best way to level in Archeage is questing. The quests are pretty linear, which makes it pretty easy to follow along. Doing quests is also where you're going to get your early cash and your gear. It comes as these bundled rewards that you have to open using labor points. What, pray tell, are labor points? Well, they're the resource that Tryon is going to use to be controlling people to get them to pay to play their free-to-play game. You see, you need labor points to build, grow, loot, harvest, and craft just about everything. You get them back over time, and if you sub, you get them back faster. Labor points are pretty valuable in game, especially to PvE players and crafters, so they can become an added source of potential income for us PvP players who might want to sell our surplus points for cash. For us PvP players, PvP gear has a couple of important stats on it that make us take less damage. And the currency we're probably going to be mostly focused on is called honor points. You get honor points from doing PvP, and you can buy gear from the honor point merchants. But as I mentioned earlier, you're probably not going to be seeing much of these honor points until much later into the game. So a question most PvP players have is, do I have to gather, craft, and farm? The short answer is no, because you can get most of this stuff from the auction house. But you still should do your first quest from the crafting guild because it's really short and easy, and it gets you a deed to a small farm, which is nice to be able to drop down. The farm is great to have because you can drop loot or packs on it and they'll stay protected. It's also just nice to have in case you happen to need to grow a little something and you can't find or you don't want to pay for that item on the auction house. You also probably want to mine a few stone nodes as you come across them. This is because stone is used to make teleport reagents known as hereafter stones. It's an easy craft at a masonry bench, and being able to teleport around is really nice. It's a huge time saver and it's super useful. You unlock teleport locations just by approaching the memory tome for that location. You don't actually have to interact with it. So let's talk a little bit more about getting around. Pretty early on you'll get a quest that gives you a mount. When you do this quest, make sure you grab about 10 extra water from the well because you're going to need it later. Mounts get better as you level them up, which you do just by riding them around and having them out while you kill things, but quest turn-ins don't matter. The first mount is nice to have, but don't get too attached to it because as soon as you get 10 gold, you're going to want to head to Mirage Isle and buy yourself a horse. I mean, the horses at Mirage Isle are just so much faster than your starting mount. I mean, you're just not going to want to play. Once you get used to them, you're not going to want to play without them. To raise your horse, you're going to need to feed it a carrot and give it some water, and then you're going to have to find a corral or a pasture that's not inside Mirage Isle to raise it. I know it sounds complicated, but it's really pretty simple. Just find a stable hand who isn't in Mirage Isle, and you should be able to find a place to raise your horse. Also fairly early on, you get a quest that gives you a glider. Similar to the mount, as soon as you hit level 20, you're going to want to head to Mirage Isle and replace it, because the upgraded gliders are just so much nicer than the experimental one you get for your quest. The glider you're going to want is this one, the Ultimate Glider, but to get it, you also need the designs for the ones underneath it, which are the Enhanced and Improved gliders. With your 3 new designs in hand, and a woodworking bench, you can take the experimental glider that you were given from your quest, unequip it, and use it as the first step in upgrading your glider all the way up to the Ultimate Glider. I know, crafting! Well, but trust me, it's worth it, and the gliders are pretty cheap. While you're leveling, take a minute and put your consumables and your play musical instrument skill on one of your bars and hotkey them. You should always have food, drink, and at least one health and mana potion hotkeyed and ready to go. Since the cooldown on these items is relatively quick, they can definitely make it or break it for you in PvP. Alright, well now you know what you need to know to get ready for PvP. Now let me tell you how and where to find it. At around level 30, your questline is going to send you to your first war zone. The zones you start out in are called protected zones, and no one can attack you in a protected zone unless you belong to the opposite faction for that zone, or you're a criminal or a pirate. However, if, as a protected player, you do decide to attack one of those other players, well, they can't of course attack you back, so pick your fights carefully. War zones are different than protected zones. They have 3 states: at war, at peace, and in between. You can kill anyone in a war zone, including your own faction, as long as it's not at peace. Of course, killing your own members of your own faction is generally frowned upon, and you get criminal points for doing that, which can eventually even get you kicked out of your own faction. During wartime, you get honor for killing enemy players, and peacetime always follows wartime. During peacetime, these zones essentially become very similar to protected zones, except that you can't even attack players from the opposite faction. Pirates and criminals, though, hey, they're still free game. During the time between war and peace, you can still kill players and take their trade packs if you catch them while they're trying to make their trade runs. You can kill other players as well, but you don't get the same kind of rewards for them that you do when the zone is at war. You can access the war zones across the sea either by sailing there or going through the portal in Yenistir or Halcyona. Arenas and battlegrounds can be accessed starting at level 40 by visiting the Battle Recruiter and Gladiator Recruiters at Ostera and Seachild Wharf. You earn honor in battlegrounds and arenas just for fighting, win or lose. On the open sea, it's always considered hostile. You can kill anyone you find out there. Finally, this game also has some awesome PvP castle sieges and an island just for pirates. But that's a discussion better left for a future video. Speaking of pirates and sailing, you can upgrade the rowboat you get while questing by buying a clipper in Mirage Isle for 50 Gilda stars. You still have to construct the boat, and I know, more crafting. But, if you want to know more about how to construct boats, check out the link I'm leaving in the comments. The guy did a great video, he explains it all very, very well. Well, that said, I hope you enjoyed this very basic video about how to get started in Archeage PvP. In my next video, I'll be doing a more advanced guide with more information about where to find PvP hotspots, what you can expect from sieges, and a few PvP tips and tricks. Thank you for watching. If you like my video, please like it, comments below. This has been Danny from Coffee, Tea, and PvP, and thank you for watching.
More loot? Don't mind if I do.